depends on his actions. Okay, that's how I feel. If he want to go there, then we could go there. It's no problem.
Well, let's get into it.
There we go. Let's get, in fact, right into Lakers Suns. LeBron and AD combining for 55 points in the win last night to give the Lakers a 2-1 lead in the series. After the game, Lakers coach Frank Vogel spoke about the lift he got from his stars last night. Take a listen.
Yeah, he changed the whole game. You know, his mindset just reversed the whole course of tonight's game. You know, wanting to get to the rim, and honestly, like our whole group did. Like AD, even though he had was dinged up with his knee and was a little bit hobbled, really committed to what worked for us in game 2, which is really running the floor, being the first big down, putting pressure on their transition defense, and that opened up a lot of driving lanes for Brown, who mentally made the decision to get downhill and just live in the paint and live at the rim. He was dominant during that stretch, and those two guys really reversed the whole course of the game.
So, Richard, he made reference there to Anthony Davis's knee. He does have a couple days to rest it, though. And with AD and LeBron seeming to get better as this series has gone along, how has your perspective on the Lakers changed over these last 2 games?
I don't think it's changed at all. I think as the further along this series goes, you knew that the Lakers were going to be in better conditioning. They weren't in playoff conditioning. All the time we always talk about, oh, you got to get in game shape. Well, you also have to be in playoff shape, and that's another level above just game shape. And they didn't play a ton of games over the course of the last 2 months. And so for me, it was all about the longer this series went on, the stronger the Lakers were going to get. The injury to Chris Paul, I think, sped up this process. But ultimately, this is what you expect from the Lakers.
Absolutely. And Rachel, you mentioned that they had 55 points between the both of them. 38 of those points were in the paint. And that's how dominant they were. The Lakers overall shot 7 for 28 from the 3 and won this game because they play with identity. They make you play their style of basketball, and they're playing old school basketball right now. We're watching LeBron James do something that we haven't seen him do in a long time, and he took guys to the post, especially Jay Crowder. We're watching Anthony Davis run the floor, get to the paint, not being allergic to the paint, not settling for jumpers, in attack mode, getting to the free throw line, establishing their identity. Look at this beautiful spin move right here, Rachel and RJ.
Travel.
This is what RJ used to get at
Travel.
when he used to try to
Look
guard
at Drummond on the bench
This is exactly
behind it,
what he
by the
used to
way.
get. This work right here. This is the LeBron James that people are scared of, and he's getting his legs up under him, like RJ said, and this is the LeBron that's going to continue to get better throughout the playoffs.
But Perk, really quickly, I want everyone to listen to me on this. Anthony Davis, when people call you a top 5 talent, that is an insult. Make no mistake about it. When they call you a top 5 talent and not a top 5 player, which means that you have all the talent, but you're not quite living up to what your talent allows you to do. So on any given night, he could be the best player on the floor, regardless if it's Steph, KD, LeBron James, James Harden. He could be the best player on the floor. That's what the term talent is. The reason why that talent doesn't mean he's a top 5 player is because top 5 players do it every single night. They do it every single night. And when he averages 10 or more free throws, the Lakers' winning percentage goes through the roof. He had 5 in game 1, and then he had 21 and then 14 in game 2. That's a level of aggressiveness. But until he does it every single night, he's still going to be considered a top 5 talent and not a top 5 player.
Right, but Richard, some of it, of course, is heart and hustle, willingness to go into the paint, willingness to play the 5 when called upon. But some of it, too, is when you break down the way the Suns were defending him in the first game, Frank Vogel came back and made adjustments to the way he asked AD to play that got to break some of those coverages. So I think the fact that he figured some of that out is a good sign for the Lakers. But then again, Chris Paul and Devin Booker and Monty Williams have a couple days to figure things out, a counter as well. I don't think the series is over by a long stretch. I guess, you think this is it? Perk, do you think the series is basically over? Because I don't.
Yeah. Monty Williams, Jay Williams, Roy Williams, Lakers at 5.
Amazing. If we could get a Photoshop of you with the cigarette out of your mouth by the end of the show, I'll be happy. Let's talk a little bit more about Chris Paul, because his teams have lost 11 consecutive playoff games when officiated by Scott Foster, a fact that he made mention of after the game. Take a listen.
We got to try to, limit their free throw attempts. They're shooting a lot of free throws last game tonight. If I was a betting man, 11 games in a row. 11 games in a row. And we'll see what happens. 11
My question is, final. Thank you for the time, Chris.
11 in a row is tough.
He wants to get that out there. They're trying to pull him off, and he's like, let me tell you that one more time. These are the 11 games that CP3 referenced. Paul's team was favored in 7 of these games. Some really memorable ones here, including last year's Game 7 with OKC against the Rockets. So, Perk, what is your reaction to this? Because I do want to note Scott Foster consistently grades out as one of the most consistent and accurate officials in the league. Those are what the numbers that the NBA says.
He is, Rachel. And look, one thing about Scott Foster is that he doesn't care who you are. He is going to officiate the game the way, and he's going to call it like he see it. Like, to me, with CP3 going out and saying that, and I respect CP3, but I don't agree with his comments after the post game. When you look at Scott Foster, he's not afraid of superstars. He's not afraid to call those calls on certain guys. Even looking at this clip right here, he could have gave CP3 a tech, but he didn't. And on top of that, look, CP3 bullies his way through other officiating. Like, he gets away with a lot of things that Scott Foster is not going to let him get away with. He fouls. He has hand checking that I'd be like, that's a foul. And he gets away with that, talking crazy to other officials. He's not going to do that to Scott Foster.
Yeah, and look, didn't we just see LaMelo get a technical for getting the referee's hands off of him? Didn't we just see that? How about talking about that? And look, I understand, Chris Paul, you are the best, in my opinion, the best, like, pure point guard of this generation. What you've done for the length of which you've done it. But we saw LaMelo Ball get a technical for doing this thing. He's just trying to make sure that you're okay, and you smack your arm off of him. These are the things when Chris was the head of the Players Association and he was a part of that, he would go and, like, contact and say the officials were doing this. No one cares, Chris, because at the end of the day, your hand, your hamstring, and now your shoulder have been more responsible for some of the struggles that you have been a part of over the course of the postseason than Scott Foster. You're too good of a player. You're too great of a player to be pointing out Scott Foster's, refereeing when he, like, grades out as one of the best officials.
Yes.
That means he gets his percentages right. So if you're losing games that this man is getting right, you can't look at him. You got to look at something else.
Rachel, RJ, think about this, right? Just think about this for a second. Scott Foster is as one of the officials in today's game. He's probably at the top for his officiating the finals. And we all know how crucial that is to make it to the finals, because you have to have that resume and you have to have that respect to officiate the finals. Look, I guarantee you could go back to players that are retired, stars that are currently playing right now, and they'll tell you Scott Foster have been the same. He officiates the game the same, and that's just Scott Foster.
Yeah.
That's
Old school rap. He reminds me of the Steve Javies. He reminds me of the Dick Pavettas. He reminds me of the guys that, like, when I go on a road game, I want to see Scott Foster. If I'm going into a road game on the playoffs, Game 7, I want to see a guy that doesn't care about who's on the other team, what building we're in, or what the fans are saying. Scott does not care, and that's the type of official that I would want in a Game 7.
Yeah, a lot of guys feel that way about Scott. And look, there are guys who feel the way Chris Paul does, and I have respect for him, respect for his opinion. And it must be frustrating to look at a number like 11 in a row. But this just isn't the way that the NBA grades these officials out. Scott Foster has consistently